Welcome to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Sade Curry, and I believe every divorced woman deserves a romantic relationship where she feels safe, loved, and cherished. You can create the most amazing life after divorce, and I will teach you how. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dating After Divorce podcast. I have a very special guest in the studio with me. Biljana Vishnagara is here today to talk about her dating after divorce story. We are colleagues in the coaching industry and have known each other for a while. So I've known her story for a little while. I'm super excited to bring her to you today. So Biljana, would you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey, Sade, thank you for having me. So as you said, my name is, I will pronounce it how I pronounce it, Biljana Vishnagara. That's okay. Stress-free zone. Don't stress, Sade. We're good. And I am a licensed clinical social worker as well as a life coach. And I help women over 40 gain confidence through mindset and human design. So I offer that combination. And I'm here to talk about all things divorce and remarriage, and I can't wait for this conversation.
Thank you. We're really honored to have you here today. I'm excited to hear your story. I know that you tell it like it is, so we're probably going to go there and go everywhere. But just so everyone knows kind of where you are in your journey, I know you are remarried because you are in my Remarriage Club series. Tell us where you are now in your family, kids, husband, all of that.
So I have been remarried 3 years now, and we have just recently moved to Florida. We had a baby last year in October, and he's 9 months old. So this is my second child, and I have a first child for my first marriage. She's will be 19 years old in September. So she's gone to college. So
you have a 19-year-old and a 9-month-old.
Yes. So, in between calling and asking about classes and making sure she's safe and drives safely and, changing diapers and crawling and all that stuff, it's kind of a little bit of a balance. But yeah, so we're just trying our best to survive the no sleep and
right
for the second time. So
yeah, I love that because I know a lot of people think this looks one way. This dating after divorce, getting remarried, having a brand new family. And this is such a testament to the fact that it can look any way you want.
Oh, yes.
There are no rules.
No rules. And I feel like, in the combination of the two of us, me being, a white European woman who is older than him and him being, Indian American younger guy.
What's the age difference?
8 years old. So So we met when he was, we were of course younger. This was several years ago, but the age difference was never really that obvious in a sense that we really got along and all that. But you have this combination of the two of us, with the biracial child, and then, my daughter who is, so it's very interesting how it all, you never know, you just kind of come up with your own idea and you just do your best to meet your own expectations in terms of what you want of your family. There are no rules. You do, this is permission to do whatever you want to do. Second time around, third time around, right? So yeah.
I love that. I teach my clients to date like CEOs. I'm like, you are literally, because they'll ask me, well, what are the rules here for this part? I'm like, no. You make the rules. I can help you. Yeah, I help you with the rules that you have for your dating journey, but you are the CEO of that dating journey. And I love that you are doing this exactly the way you want it to. But I know everyone's going to be curious about the age difference. So you said you are older. He's 8 years younger. How did you guys navigate that? Was there a conversation? Did anybody lie?
No, this was, we worked together. So we met, I've known him for a while, but we kind of started talking and whatnot after I got separated, a few months after I got separated. And one of the times we were having just a conversation and somebody said, oh, hey, Dr. V, happy birthday. And I'm like, oh, happy birthday. How old are you? Really? And he's like, oh, he turned 28. 28 was it? Or 29, whatever. And I'm like, oh, crap. And I started laughing and I'm like, oh, because it was already, I kind of already liked it, right? So I didn't really compute. I kind of knew he was younger, but I really didn't know, how much. So, and I was like in my mid 30s and I'm like, oh my God, what is this going to be? Like, how do I, and from the beginning, it was not, I didn't expect much, right? But as it went on, but yeah, it shocked me. Yeah. And then I was like, well, what do? I can't get younger, right? Like, and I can't make him older. And I like him enough that I was willing to try, at least see what it looks like. So, and here we are, so many years later with the child.
I know. And it's so beautiful. Now, I know I had heard a little bit of your story before in times that we've connected in the past. And he was sort of the one who was more open to the relationship, if I'm remembering correctly. Can you tell us about that?
In terms of I always talk about attachment styles. And if you remember, like when I was doing divorce coaching, I always talked about the avoidance style, which, I had to work through, but he was a secure style. So from the beginning, he was open to, he understood I came with baggage, if you will, right? He understood, and I was honest with him. I told him I have a daughter and I told him all that. I wasn't hiding anything, right? But he also was very open and very understanding that I do have certain dynamics with my ex and that I had to work through a lot of stuff. And I think his patience was the main thing, because I think his way of acting and being open and willing to communicate and talk about it and, listen to me vent and, be difficult. It was it almost shocked my system, almost nervous system, into resetting itself. Because first I didn't know what to do with it, because this was like a completely normal relationship. It's like, what is it? And I think I told you, we did the Clubhouse one time.
Yes,
and I think I told you, it's like, I was so suspicious, for the first few months. It's like, what is wrong with him? Is he a sociopath? Right? Like, why is he so nice? Yes. Why does he get me a present because of nothing? He just out of nowhere, he would. So I was perpetually suspicious. And, but yeah, he was much more open. And, we've had a bit of difficulty to begin with, just because I was not really interested in any commitment or anything, but, once he kind of, like I said, shocked me into more, secure style and moving towards more secure things, things changed.
Right. And I heard you use the word patient, and I wanted to highlight that because I think I've seen that as there aren't a lot of rules in the dating space, dating after divorce, but there are clues to success that I have picked up just with working with so many women, and meeting someone who exhibits patience as a lifestyle, I think is a clue. This person is patient versus dismissive, patient versus tolerance. Like a person might tolerate some of your challenges or tolerate your situation. But that's very different from being willing to engage in it and be in it without responding in a way that's negative, without getting tired of you having to deal with an ex or, having to deal with co-parenting and all of that. Patience, I think, is a really different, you can't fake patience. No one can pretend.
And you can only like somebody so much, you know what I mean? Like before you just you're like, oh no.
Yeah, this is way too much trouble.
Way too much mess. Because I don't know how I would be in a relationship with somebody who has an ex and who has had some issues and, revolving stuff and things coming up. I don't know. So you're right. Patience. Yeah,
I love that. Thank you for highlighting that. Now, what were your thoughts before you met him about getting remarried? Had you thought about getting remarried? Was it on your mind? Were you planning to?
Do you want me to say it? Hell no. No, I just the way kind of my marriage went and the way we got married so quickly and I got pregnant and it was so rushed and so made me feel very trapped. So I've had this very strong belief that marriage equated being trapped as far as I was concerned. Let me get married. Once I had the ring on, I was trapped. It was control. Right. So I literally, if you asked me 8 years ago, 7 years ago, I would have said, oh no, I never thought about having kids or getting remarried. Maybe at some point, but certainly not a few years after, so yeah.
Right. Now, did you ever have to work through those thoughts? After you met your new husband, did those thoughts continue to Were you? Were they at the back of your mind? Were you anxious?
Oh, yeah.
How did you work through that?
We joke. It was like he always said like he tried to marry me for 3 years. And I was like, oh no. And I would say, don't think about it.
Yeah.
Or like, if it ever came up, I would be like, don't even.
But you were together during those 3 years you were dating.
Yeah. And it was kind of like the background was, we're moving in that direction. And then I had like those individual thoughts. Right. But, as much as he was patient, I was willing. I think that was something that it worked really well on my part. It was super uncomfortable, but I was willing to do things differently, or to change my thinking. And one of the best things that I did for myself is finally realize he is not my ex, because I had this huge overarching thought: all men are assholes. My ex, right? Like, so everybody, and then I'm like, and then I started questioning it, right? That's the point where, as you know, you do mindset as well. Until you start questioning, you don't start changing it, because it'll just, go on, unquestioned. Right. So not all
we have
men
these
are the
thoughts
same. Yeah.
That people, and my clients do tend to have those thoughts like, oh, there's no good men out there. All the good men are taken. Right. If they were good, they would be in their relationships. A lot of just those like general thoughts that get thrown out there, or you see them on these horror story sites about dating, and they absorb them in, and it just seems to be the truth of the universe that everything is bad out there. Can you talk about how you questioned? What are some ways that you questioned your thoughts, or what are some ways that they can question their thoughts when they feel like there's nothing out there for them? Do you wonder exactly how divorced women just like you are meeting eligible men who want a real relationship and a commitment? They're doing it by dating with their core values. Your core values are the GPS that lead you to the partner you've been looking for. When you use your core values on dating apps, text messages, and at social events, you will easily connect with your true match partner without chasing, settling, or wasting time with non-committal men. I have taught exactly how to do this in the 2-hour Core Values Dating Blueprint course available on my website, sadecurry.com/dating. That's SADECURRY.com/dating. You will learn exactly how to identify your core values and use them on your dating profile, how to ask the right questions via text, and how to tell the right stories on dates, so that you attract the right people and repel those who aren't right for you. If you're ready to meet your true match, hop over to sadecurry.com/dating or click the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Well, I did know, I had a couple of friends that actually had remarried and had good marriages. I also had a few friends that had their first marriage was really good. I also, the thought of all men are this, all men are that. So like that's the generalizing thought that I had. And then I would think to myself, well, my dad was not a bad husband. Like my dad was not a sociopath. My dad was not right. Like this was, so if you just find, I think with like, when you start changing your mindset and your thoughts, I think people feel like they have to go from, oh, all men are horrible and everybody's taken to, oh, everybody's available. You can't do that. You can't make such a huge jump. So even just loosening up a little bit of the thought and questioning, like I said, well, really, do I know all men? That's what I would, ask the questions, unless you've met every single man and you've dated every single man, you have no clue. I mean, all men, every man, like that's that's a red flag to look for in thinking in general. Anytime there's an absolute word attached, everybody, all the time, never, always, that's your first red flag, right? And ask yourself, like, really, is this really true?
Yeah.
Right? And once 100%. You find something that just a little bit kind of, opposes your current thought, then you can loosen it up a little bit and be like, well, maybe it's possible that there is a man out there or here, so online, right? Like somewhere. It's possible. Statistically, it's possible, right? So you offer your brain a little bit more of a logical point of view, because when you're scared and when you're like, fresh out of traumatic relationship or toxic relationship, you're not thinking with your logical brain. It's survival mode.
Yeah, 100%. And here, there's a little trick that I've done with some of my clients who have maybe a background more similar to mine, where they really saw very few good men. So my dad and my mom, divorced when I was very young, and my dad was violent in some ways. Like it just was just like really bad, a little bit of a shit show. and and my marriage was the same. And so my experience in many ways was that, well, a lot of men are this way. And then I started hearing about people that I thought were good people also turning out to not be great. So even though I knew logically that not all men were a certain way, experientially and emotionally, I did not have that experience. And one of the things I did while I was dating, because I kept initially attracting people who were more like my dad and like my mom, not my mom, like my ex, I went on a scavenger hunt in the world. So for several months, I would look at men at my workplace or at events that I went to, my friends' husbands, and I would write down the qualities that they had that were positive. I would literally look at them in action and say, oh, look at how gentle he's being with his kid versus what I had experienced with my ex, or look at this, or I would listen, you know how coworkers will call home during the day and you can hear the conversation. And I would listen to how some of the really nice guys were talking to their wives on the phone. And so I went on a scavenger hunt and really reset my own brain and the data that my brain had by looking for it in the world. So there's so many different ways to do that, the way, depending on who the person is. But I love that you questioned it. I had to go look for evidence. I was not able to just walk through it myself.
And I think it was helpful because, I adored my dad. They didn't have the best marriage. I wouldn't say no violence or anything like that. I think they were just different people. My parents were. Somehow they managed to stay married for 45 years, until both of them passed away. But he, in his own right, was just a patient man and just very stable, consistent, and all that stuff, which were qualities that I were attracted to, or that was, part of why I was like so attached to my dad. It was like the calmness and all that. And then fast forward to this husband, he's very calm and very patient, and just in general, like I've seen him mad 2-3 times, and then I would, I'm like right away, because the Leo, like, when they get mad, you're like, okay, bye. You disappear for a little bit, but really, like, and in comparison to my former marriage, like I knew what I wanted, I just didn't get it the first time around. So then I decided it just doesn't exist. And like I said, referring back to my dad and like a few marriages that I do know of, I was like, yeah, it's possible, it exists, right? So it's out there, scavenger hunt, or however you want to, go about doing that. You have to question it. And you were doing the same thing. You were just not questioning per se. You were just looking for evidence to oppose your belief, or evidence for the belief that you want to kind of embody, right? So either way, you question and you just kind of break your brain a little bit. You have to do that.
You do have to do that. This is why coaching is so helpful. It's like, you can't just let your brain run the show. Yeah. Or
you could, and then you stay in that loop. I've had clients, when I was doing divorce, I would have clients who were in the same, in the same dynamic and the same lifestyle for like years after it. Right. I had a coworker who didn't date for 15 years after she got divorced. She was still getting enraged over all that, like 15 years later. Right. It's like, you have to, at some point, you just have to move on, if nothing else, for your own sanity. Yes. You have to break that cycle. And, that means forgiving him. It doesn't matter what happened. You have to protect your own sanity and just move the hell on. Like, just leave that. You have a life to live. You can't live like that,
It's sort of like sunk costs. If an investment has gone bad, you do not keep throwing resources into it.
An investment. And this is where a lot of people get caught up, right? Like, we were married for 20, 30, whatever years. But if the quality of marriage was shitty for half of that time, you really didn't have 30 years of marriage. You had maybe 10 years of marriage, and then you had 20 years of misery, right? So you have to also, time doesn't mean anything. You could have been married for 45 years, like my parents, with not such an ideal marriage, right?
Yeah.
So
I know one of the thoughts that I initially had, this was early in the divorce, actually probably before the divorce got finalized, like just during the separation. And I was looking back, because we separated at 17 years of marriage. And I was like, oh my God, I lost so many years. I wasted so many years in this. And I realized that the thought I wasted so many years was causing me to continue wasting additional time thinking about the time that I'd wasted.
It's true though. I mean, technically, yes, you have lost time, right? Technically, time has passed by, but to me, it's, if I didn't go through the experiences that I went through, I would not have the marriage that I have now. I'm not saying it's worth it. It was a beautiful experience. I mean, certainly I would have liked to skip the part of having, right, like and then just become this woman who just marries a completely different man, right? Like, but some of us don't have that, right? Yeah. So it's,
and who we were then, literally, I look back and I'm like, sometimes I go back and I'm saying, okay, well, I wonder if she could have done something different. I know myself. At 21, I'm like, no, that was exactly what I was going to do.
Please. I was clueless. I just, like I said, like we were just talking before this, and I feel like, once I got pregnant, it, which, like I said, took 7.5 seconds, with the meeting him.
Yeah.
I was like, yep, that's it. Right. Like, what other option do I have? Like, it wouldn't even, I wouldn't even consider anything else. Right. Like, it was, you got to do what you got to do. I'm 23 years old and have no clue. So fast forward to, getting married at almost 40, it's a huge difference. Huge. And that's because of the experience that I had. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I was willing to let this guy, and I was going to say, I'm sorry. I was willing to, that's one thing that divorced women have once they get remarried, I feel, is they're willing to let go of a relationship that's not the relationship that they want. To me, comparing to what I've gone through, I was willing to either wait or either just, I was not going to settle again. And I'm willing to let the relationship go if it's not what I want,
Right. So. What do you think gave you that confidence to be in this relationship and say, well, if this didn't work out, I'm not going to marry him just because we're in a relationship or just because I have him now. If this isn't working, I'm going to let him go. Like, what gave you the confidence to do that? What would you call that quality? I call it detachment, but sometimes that sounds a little cold to be detached, but it's kind of like the opposite of being super attached and needy to a person in your life.
Well, but I think the reason I say that is that I am now convinced that I will be okay no matter what. Like, I was a single mom for a few years. I paid all the bills. I took care of my child. I had a career. I mean, I was perfectly fine. And there's one thing for me, at least, maybe that's, some of the attachment style speaking for me, but you mentioned detachment, but you technically don't need anybody. There is this idea that we need a person, and no, you don't. You don't. So when you come from that standpoint, if you see your life and you see your capability, you see what you're able to do, take care of yourself, how actually strong and capable you are, right? You then need more proof that this is the man that you should marry, right? Like, I don't, right? Like, I know. Yeah. Like, you better be good for me to leave all this where I'm perfectly fine. I mean, it took me a while, it took me a little bit of time, but once I bounced back, I was like, because I thought I had it all, right? Like, I thought I was like a catch,
So you were. That's actually the truth. You were.
Yeah. And really, if I look back, you're right. So it's also good to kind of like collect proof, or like you were doing the scavenger hunt. It's really a good idea to write down why am I such a good catch, right? What makes me a great catch? I guarantee you have plenty of things to say, Yeah.
That module in my program is called the Irresistible You. And I look at it like, you are irresistible already, and you are making an irresistible relationship offer to this other person. Like, it's irresistible. All of them are going to want it. Sometimes the women are like, there's all these weirdos who are messaging me on the app. I'm like, of course they are. You're amazing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants.
But I mean, women get stuck on that. Oh, I tried. Okay. But you don't have to do anything about it. Like, just because people are right, people can offer. And it's like, they can try and they can, I mean, I had some suggestions that I was like, oh God, like, do I really look like that person to you? And that would be a no. And you just move on. Right. But it's again, it's like a list of evidence. This is not what I want. And I am very good with knowing what I don't want. So, I always go from, there. So I'm like, no. Oh, no. And then it's like, this is what I do want, right? The opposite. So just use it as proof for, of course I'm a catch, but like, if a creeper comes around, that happens to everybody. You could be, that's not a personal attack on you. That's just a creeper walking around wanting to, seeing if he can find a victim, for their creepiness.
He's an equal opportunity creeper.
He is. Next thing you know, that's what happened to a client of mine whose husband remarried within 7 days
oh my God.
divorcing. And she was in this thing where, she's younger and she's better looking, and he had nothing to do with you. He's already been married 4 times. You see the pattern, it's about him. He is doing this. If not you, it's going to be Joanne down the road. He does not care as long as his needs are met. Yes. You are just part of his journey to, womanizing or whatever. Right. So,
and I love that you're highlighting just a lot of that internal churn that women have after divorce. A lot of these examples and things that you're talking about are just these are the thoughts that fly across our head. Why is he moved on so quickly? How could he move on? How could he abandon this? A lot of those thoughts. And I want to, ask you about, what do you think the cost of not processing those thoughts is? Because we've talked about, the guy, what you think about a creeper, what you think about yourself. We keep just jumping from thought to thought to thought that women think after divorce. Mm-hmm. And you and I talk about it because we've both processed those thoughts, and we've both been coached by coaches and therapy. What is the cost of not working through all of that?
Well, for me, it would have been not marrying a really great man. For you too, as well, right? Your husband is great. So that would be one cost. That would be one cost. I wouldn't have the crazy, energized 9-month-old right now, right? I wouldn't have the life that I do have. That would be the first thing that I would, and it's just missed opportunities. And, it takes a toll on you. You don't, I'm not talking about just future relationships, but you change as a person. It changes you as a person. It changes your brain. So you walk around in this fog and this constant, fog of, it's not going to work out. Nobody, they're no great men or whatever. Right. So you just keep walking through life, missing all these opportunities, showing up, not willing to take risks, and you don't take risks. So a lot of it.
I think a lot of it also keeps you stuck in survival mode. Yeah. So if you're experiencing survival mode has certain emotions that go along with it, a lot of insecurity, fear, anxiety, just stuff that happens because you lost your money, probably lost your home. I lost all of those things along the way. My kids were insecure and were very stressed through the divorce. And I can't imagine not processing that through therapy, through coaching, to kind of lay it all down and imagine carrying all that on an ongoing basis. Hey, I'm going to show up at work with all of this. I'm going to show up in my business with all of this. I'm going to show up for my kids with all of this. I think at some point that work is so very important to be able to lay it down and free up resources to be able to move on, to be able to do something new.
To move on and to just be present in your own life. I think, for me, I was very distracted. The last few years of the marriage, I couldn't really, I was functioning, but I was functioning around certain things job and school and whatever, but I didn't have the emotional capacity for anything else. It was just drudgery, right? Day to day, I was depressed, and it was just, I always kind of compare it to a withering flower. It was not quick. It was just a slow death, basically emotional death, So had I not done the work, and had I not, I didn't have a coach at the time. I didn't even know what coaching was, but I was lucky that I worked at a place where I was a therapist, and I had a lot of therapist people there. So I didn't, I would just go from one to another, just when I would have meltdowns, and I was very open about talking about stuff, and I still am, right? Yeah. It's in terms of my experience, not talking about him, but just talking about myself. So that helped me, just even saying it, and just even saying it out loud, it kind of changes the tone, right? Yes. When you say okay, this needs to be figured out. I'm wasting my life. You think you wasted your time being in that marriage? No, you're wasting your time now. Yeah. You're just continuing to waste your time because you're still stuck in the same survival mode, like you said.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So let's talk about your new family. What is what would you say your most interesting dynamic is? What's the most fun thing that is come about because you're remarried and you have this interesting family dynamic? What's unique to your family?
Well, like I said, the age difference, the race, religions, it's you could not have put two different people, complete difference. his parents are Indian, and, like my parents, my mom had a chance to meet him. And, but that's interesting. Like, the one fun thing is, like, he knows a little bit of my language, actually quite a bit.
Oh.
So
did he learn it after he met you?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah. And of course, the first set of words were swear words, because that's how I roll. But like, so now, like, when we speak to the little one, I speak to him in Serbian, right? But in my language, but he speaks like 3 languages to him, so that's kind of fun.
So
but
fun.
Yeah. And one thing is interesting, like my daughter, I believe, she never told me, but I believe she chose to pursue psychiatry. At least that's the choice right now. Mm-hmm. We've had 59 different choices, but let's go with this one. I think because he's a physician. So she has seen him, talk about medicine and talk about that stuff. So it's interesting. It's interesting how your dynamic is completely unique. You cannot even imagine what that'll look like. You
can't imagine. And I know that for me as well, like, coming in, a lot of what I was like, I'm just going to pray for peace, right? Like, we all get along. That was like my huge I knew my husband was the one. And for the most part, I think both of us were just like, okay, as long as the other person gets along with the other person's kids, we're good.
Yeah.
But we've reaped so many more rewards beyond that. Like, he's a night owl. Actually, he and both my kids are night owls. Yeah. So I'm usually in bed at 10 and they stay up till like 2 a.m. It's crazy. And there was a night my daughter, she went off to college. First of all, she went off to college last year during COVID, and I had surgery the same week. So he took her and got her settled in to college last fall, which was just incredible. And then you never know when they're going to be homesick. Well, the day she got homesick, it was like 2 a.m. So guess who talked her through her first major wave of homesickness? It was my husband. And that was just such a gift that I could not have prayed for that. Like, that would have been like way above and beyond what I could pray for. And I think when you don't give yourself that opportunity to dream, we're falling so far below what we can have.
That was my fear as well. Yeah. Because I didn't know, I mean, again, he doesn't have any kids, but, she was 14. Oh my God. However old she was when they met. So there's a fear, what if she doesn't accept him? Then I would be in a position where I would have to make a choice. And of course, I know what I would have chosen.
For sure.
So you're like, oh, come on, let's work this out. Like, so, it took a little bit. She's very shy, very, she's not really very open at first, but then, fast forward a few years, they cook together, they share recipes, or she'll go to him for advice. When she doesn't come to me, she'll listen to him rather than me. Right. So that's it shows you there's trust, and it shows you there is at least, care for one another. And, so that helps, especially now that there's a little one, that is his sister. So it's a hot mess. It's a mix, but it's fine. I mean, of course, there's always something coming up.
There's always the hot mess part of it,
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it's not like a smooth story where it's like, we're all like now like dancing around together and stuff. Like, it gets like, when I had to talk to her about something, or about her dad, whatever, right? Yes. It gets a little bit, but it's, we get along fairly well, I would say, I think
what were the signs? And this is going to be my last question, because I know I could just keep peppering you with all the questions. Every time we talk about something, I remember something else a client or someone in the audience has asked. What was it about him that made you think he would be a good parent for your daughter?
The way he treated me, because I'm a petulant child deep down. I could throw a fit. Really. And, the patience. Because I knew if this man can put up with me, he didn't even meet her for the first year. So I didn't, I was very scared about all that. But if he could put up with me and be patient with me and be consistent and never run away and like still be around, I knew he would be a good dad. I mean, or stepdad, I should say. Yeah. At least he will be open enough and willing to give it a try. And I would say he was a stepfather before he was even a father,
so true.
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to then see how he was with her, and then kind of assume how he would be with him. But I also had a chance to meet his family, and all the men in his family are exceptional fathers. That seems to be, I want to say, almost like a cultural thing, the insistence on being a family man and all that stuff. I really like that. That reminds me of like my culture, right? When It's like you provide for, not provide necessarily, but you're there for the family.
Yes, you're present and participate in the family.
I find that very sexy. Like I find, somebody who is with kids. I mean, that's why I was like, no problem. Let me be 42 and have a child.
Yes. Come on. I think that's a sign when a man is interested in family as a concept. Now, of course, there's so many different versions and variations of that, but in the sense that you're thinking of it, this is exactly what you wanted. Now, I do have clients who are like, hey, I'm done. I'm ready to be a grandmother. I want someone who is also in that stage of life. And I think I love that you're giving the audience a view into just, you can choose whatever. What is it that you truly want as a person?
And you know what? I really don't care much about like what people think. And like, I've heard a lot of opinions, and I really try to care a lot of the times, and I just cannot get past them.
You're like, no, I'm trying really hard to care what you think.
Oh girl, I'm like, just tell me more so I can care less. And, I mean, of course, certain opinions I will respect, but in general, like, there's this misconception. Oh, I'm you're not having a baby. Like, don't worry about me. You're not paying my bills. You don't know don't worry about me. I can still produce eggs. And we can stay, and he's like the most beautiful child ever. Like, he's like, I'm like, see, I waited 18 years to make this. So again, like I said, any scenario is possible, whatever you want. If you choose not to have kids and you prefer somebody closer to your age, so you guys can be empty nesters, I mean, more power to you. I don't, but I know several of my friends who have divorced, married in their 20s, divorced in their 30s or so, and then who have kids now in their 40s because it's a new relationship. So that's the same analogy with, all men are this or all men. No, they're not. Right. So this is not the same marriage. This is the marriage where I actually do want to have a child with this. Why wouldn't I?
Right. And some men want to have kids. That's the other fear. He wanted it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was, and I knew he did, even before we got married. So I knew that one day he wanted a kid. So I knew that, like, it's not like I was, and I always used to tell clients, you have to have some of those conversations really early on. And when a man says, oh, I really don't want kids, what he's trying to say is, I don't want any more kids.
Want my kids.
I mean, but like I think we get like delusional sometimes. Oh, he'll change his mind. But why would you want him to, that becomes a problem 5 years into the marriage. You're like, oh, you don't want kids. Okay.
100%.
You should have those. Yeah. Religion and educate those big. I think that was also what I knew was the problem with my first marriage, like the huge discrepancies in values and like, priorities and stuff. I did not want that for this marriage. You have to have some overlap, not everything, but you have to have some big values overlapping.
Yes. And I actually want to highlight what you said. Oh, I want to highlight like so many things, but
let's talk.
Let's highlight the conversations, because this is something, and in my program, sometimes some of the ladies struggle with how much depth has to go into thinking about those things. Right? Like we have what we call relationship gates, which is, okay, while you're dating, what are the stages you want your relationship to evolve through before you go exclusive? And then after you go exclusive, then when you are exclusive and you're moving towards commitment, I help them design their relationship milestones, which is basically the conversations that you're talking about. And some people have a hard time bringing up, hey, let's get tested for STDs. Hey, how's the money going?
Right.
Hey, do you want kids? Hey, where are you going to live? Or I'm starting a business in the next 6 months or in the next year. What is that going to look like? So my husband and we had those conversations. We actually sat down, and a lot of the work that I do in my program is built on the work that we did. We had a relationship milestones document. So we're just those people. We created this document.
Tell me more, Sade.
We both put in what we considered milestones towards commitment. And we kept using the phrase, well, if this goes the way we think it's going, we never assumed anything. We didn't assume that we were going somewhere. And so, for example, the child conversation, I was a maybe on kids because I really thought it would be really nice to have kids with someone as amazing as him. I was a maybe, but I was also 40, and I was like, I don't know. I was right there, on the edge. And he was a no. He was just like, I'm not into this kid thing. And so, but we had the conversation so early, and I sold myself on not having any more kids because it wasn't. So the kid part of it, I wasn't dying to change diapers and like snuggle a little baby. I was,
I wonder why. It's great. Like I'm like sleep deprived for the next. I tell you, it would take me 7 years to like recuperate. Like I've been not sleeping at all. But this is the thing. It's like I mean, of course, you don't bring it up on your first date. First date. You can't be that. What's your social? Do you have STDs? Like some things are just a little bit weird to ask, and you just don't want to. But I always say, any kind of relationship, but like that kind of relationship where you maybe want to be invested at some point, or you think it's kind of going somewhere. I think you don't want to start a relationship on lies, or especially on confusion, right?
Or assumptions.
I told him I have a child, and at that time I was still separated. I'm separated, right? Like, so it's not like 5 months later, he's like, and even the conversation about kids, like you said, I was not, if it hadn't happened, like I would not have been like, completely destroyed, but I was open enough. So I was a maybe and he was a yes, right? For us was like a little bit different. So I didn't talk myself into it, but like I processed it enough that I was like, okay, I'm open to this. Let's try. And if it doesn't, we set the age of 42, like the deadline. If I don't have him, don't get pregnant by 42, forget it. Like we're just gonna, it's fine. And I did get pregnant, before I turned 40. Yeah. So, but you have to have those conversations. It's awkward, but it's awkward when you have the conversation about why didn't you tell me, 11 months ago that you have 2 children, like I've never seen your children or stuff like that, or that you have a 430 credit score, which one of the people that,
because not asking, I think sometimes we don't want to ask, and we will tell ourselves that, it's been said, it's been implied, so that we don't have to ask because of avoiding the discomfort.
Yeah. Or you don't want to know.
Right.
Sometimes you don't, because you have suspicious kinds, where you're like, he does not look like an 800 credit score. I can guarantee you. I mean, well, right. But you have to, like, at this point, like that might have appealed to me when I was 20 and when I thought like it was romantic, like to not have a regular income and whatever. Actually, I never did, but he was not the type like I was, my ex. But like nowadays, if you came to me and you said like, oh, I don't have a good credit, bye.
Yeah. And what you would accept at 20 is very different. It's a very different stage of life. When you're in your midlife, like a 22-year-old who doesn't have a stable career is very different from a 40-something-year-old who doesn't have a stable career. Two different things.
Yeah, I had a client and he was actually, it reminds me because then I shared with her that example, her ex or whatever, like he had a horrible credit score, and she kept saying, oh, he's trying. No, he's not trying. Like you or like there was a guy that she met who hasn't had a job, right? Like for a couple of years, same story. Like she was giving them a second chance. Oh, he's really trying. No, I mean, you can lose it, fall on hard times and stuff, but not for like 2-3 years. A guy who drove her home. Yeah. A guy who came to pick her up on a date. This is the same client. I was like, holy crap. He came to pick her up completely drunk. Like she had to drive them to a date. And I'm like, so again, a woman in her 40s. So we have to reevaluate that stuff because again, there's the willingness to walk away from a relationship that does not meet your criteria, but you have to be clear on your criteria first.
Yes.
And set them really high. I always used to say, set a hell yes list, set them super high. Then you can adjust, not adjusting from the beginning. You set that criteria very high and then you can kind of, you're talking about your life here. And it's your quality of life is hugely dependent on who you're with, as you know. Right. It's a decision that will change your whole course of your whole life if you're not careful. Right.
100%. Yeah. And like we were saying before we started this call, pretty much everything we've talked about is you have to have the confidence to do that. The confidence to set those standards really high, the confidence to have these conversations. Like, could you just, and now that you're a confidence coach, could you just kind of tie it all together with like, what does that confidence look like? If you were to have it in a little box that you could hand to someone, what would that look like? And that's a weird way of putting it. But
well, first of all, I tell people it's not sexy. Confidence just feels like hot mess a lot of the times, right? So I think that expectation that all of a sudden you're out of this marriage and you're supposed to be this like exuberant, joyful woman to be confident is not really true. Just the fact that you have gone through it is you being confident, right? But also just the decision to show up differently, right? I mean, I can continue, there's that acceptance and commitment therapy. I'm all over the place when I talk. But he talks about the 3 ways to deal with the situation. You either stay and you make it better. You stay, you don't do anything, it just continues to be the same or worse, or you leave, right? So the example of you not changing anything, so you come from this marriage that was dysfunctional, you don't do anything about your confidence. You don't make any different decisions in terms of how you want to be, how you want to show up. You believe stuff should happen overnight. It only, you can only get so far with that kind of mentality, right? You will continue doing the same thing and getting the same result. 100%. So to me, that's all. Confidence doesn't feel good to begin with, at least, didn't to me at any point when I was struggling. But it's, decision to do it differently, and commitment. It can be a slow process to begin with. Yeah. Just understand. And again, it's just negative feeling. We always talk about that, being able to sustain or to feel negative feelings, quote unquote negative, but difficult feelings, and not run away, not trying to buffer and not try to, that's the bit we all run away from that stuff. So that building up confidence that's very uncomfortable, super uncomfortable.
I call it courage. And I actually think courage is a negative emotion. Like there's nothing fun.
I actually did a live, a story yesterday, and I had so many responses. It was funny because I said, I know you know this, but courage feels like shit.
It does.
And it does. And I was just talking about it because it's like we have this idea of like a Braveheart moment. Like I said, you're in this exuberant, orgasmic experience where you're battle. Like, yeah, no, 97% of the time you will be crying. You will feel like a hot mess. You will feel inadequate. You will feel all kinds of crappy stuff, right? It's a cleanse. I almost feel like going through divorce and post-divorce is like a cleanse or purge. If you've never had any emotional purge, you will have the emotional purge. Yeah. And all of that is courage because you keep pushing through it, right? Yes. It feels like crap, and then you still show up and do it the next day. So, you talked about the milestone and gates. You have to put stages. Yes. It isn't just about.
And the stages don't always feel good. You're going through those stages and you're like,
but here's the expectation. We have been conditioned to think, like I said, the courage feels great, right? But like we are a culture of toxic positivity, right? Like everything has to be, for you to feel like you're an emotionally stable person, you have to be joyful and delusionally happy all the time. That's not normal. Like if I, as a clinician, saw you as delusional, as happy all the time, I'd be like, hold on, where's my DSM-5? Behind me. Hold on, girl. Let me see what's going on.
Let me see what's
It's not normal, right? So like understanding, I always tell clients, expect it to be shitty. I mean, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but if you set the expectation low with that, right, then anything better than that, anything that feels a little bit better is pushing you forward, right? Then you're like, oh, okay. I survived the horrible, first few months, and like, here, look at me, right? Like I'm having a better day. I never use the scales. I don't like scales, but I would always ask them, how often are you crying these days? Are you crying less often, right? Oh, I'm crying, now I cry like, 2 out of 7 days. Okay, we're good. You used to cry 5 out of 7 days.
Right. Now we're moving forward.
Yes. Yeah. And you get to decide what courage is for you. That's always, again, no shoulds. Like we said, you get to decide whatever it is for you. Yeah.
There are no rules. I love that so much. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing so openly with us. Like this was just such an amazing conversation. Might have to have you back.
You should. I could talk about that stuff because it's true. The reason is it's universal truth. Like once you've gone through it and once you kind of have seen the light,
yes.
The other side, you're like, no, people need to know this. It does get better. It does.
Really does.
It's like it passes, but like at first it feels like a kidney stone. That meme.
All right, guys. I told you she tells it like it is. It's gonna be. It might be like a kidney stone part of the time. But
yeah, might be some blood in your urine. No, I'm just joking. But it'll pass.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Biljana.
You're welcome.
All right. For those who may not want to go to the show notes to find out where they can find you, would you mind just kind of spelling out your social media handles and websites on here?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's better_, after_40. And I'm on Instagram. I do reels. I think I'm hilarious, but what else? Or on Facebook, you can, Biljana and then Vishnagara. It took me a second.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking this time to talk to my ladies. I know they're going to just love this episode. There's just so much value and so much wisdom in it. Thank you. I will link up all your information in the show notes. And for sure, I know I will be seeing you and hanging out with you. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. And we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today. If you are ready to get married after divorce, I want to invite you to download my free 8-video training specifically designed to help divorced women date with ease and get married again. Head over to sadecurry.com to get started. That's SADECURRY.com. I'll see you inside.